Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. You are tuned into the live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter for Talk About Your Community. I'm Todd Nielsen with Clocktower Advisors, your host, and thank you for all of you who have decided to spend a little bit of your morning with me, at least this morning here for me, here in the Midwestern United States. And this is a show really about community building, people that are involved with communities, whether they're live or virtual, and what are the ways that we come together and share meaningful experiences with each other and do more to improve the world we live in. So it is optimistic, if you will. Today, my guest is Dani Weinstein. He has been a major person in the community space for many years, has worked in some very large enterprises, and we're going to have him on the show in just a second. Just by way of some housekeeping, I wanted to let you know that our next stream is going to be coming up on November the 11th, and that's going to be with Adrian Speyer and my friend Jenny Weigel as well, both friends. Adrian just came out with this wonderful book for B2B online communities called The Accidental Community Manager. And it is a great read. I just finished it, and very insightful book. And he'll be coming on the show. We'll be talking a little bit about the book, his experiences writing it, how that's all gone so far. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Dani on here, and we're going to chat a little bit about state of community, where things are, and his new role at SAP. Please give him a warm welcome, Dani. Hey, how are you, my friend?
It's been a while. Good morning, good afternoon to all who have joined us, or evening if you're in another time zone. I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me here. It's been a while.
I'm so glad you could come back. The last time you were on the show, that might have been last year, in fact, you came in and you were talking a bit about international communities or localization with communities and sort of multi-language support, kinds of situations. Have you really kind of spent most of your career in sort of the large enterprise, that are either national or multinational kinds of community spaces?
So my entire career, certainly since graduate school, which was long ago, I had many years at HP. All of my roles at HP were global in nature. So I interfaced with global teams, with European teams typically based in Amsterdam, Asian teams in Asia Pacific based in Singapore, South American teams based in Sao Paulo typically. Led many program management level roles in HP consumer support. Part of that, I was a product manager. In the community world, when we launched HP Support Forums, we ended up launching 7 separate language communities in 15 months. Wow. Now, again, this was a massive B2C consumer support organization. So I think when I left, our annual budget was more than $1 billion. So you think about all the call center overhead for call, email, chat, remote control support, and there was a huge thirst for putting that up, creating communities for support. So we already had several dozen languages of support, for all of these different channels that I just mentioned, including the web, which was, I think, probably pushing 30 languages. So we had a lot of great data, and we could justify the business cases for launching English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, simplified Chinese, and Korean. And so that period of time when we worked with Lithium Today Koros and really having the opportunity to work with some of the smartest people in the industry at the time, Joe Cothrell and Brian Oblinger and even John Wishart and others, because we became one of Lithium's biggest accounts fairly quickly. We really understood how to truly localize and deliver these experiences. And it's not just about, having a translation tool or even buying language pack. It's really having people feet on the street. So again, we had, teams in Amsterdam. So, Wendy Skipper is a good friend of mine, helped lead the teams managing and running the French and German communities. But we had moderators that were native German speakers, French speakers, simplified Chinese speakers. And in many cases, they either, were in local country or they had grown up there. So it's not just, converting it to the language. It's also understanding the context of the language, the nuances, the culture. And that really helped us thrive in those communities. When I went, from there to the two unicorns that I've been at prior to coming to another enterprise organization like SAP. So going to Domo and to Kaltura, they're different animal. They're B2B, much smaller, 500-person companies, pre-IPO. In Domo's case, they had a very strong customer base in Japan. So, the company Domo means thanks in Japanese, like you would say Domo arigato. And so they had a passion to set up shop there early on in their days. So there was a very strong need for us to deliver a fully localized experience in Japanese, which we did, I think, a couple months after we teed up the English community. From there, we sort of did, I would call, more of a Band-Aid approach. We had maybe half a dozen languages that Domo offered in their product. And however, the user base, the vast majority of the user base were actually using the interface in English. So only less than 100 customers per language were actually opting in to switch it manually to, let's say, Spanish or German or simplified Chinese. So that wasn't enough to support a community. But what we did do is we deployed a Google, Google had a Google Translate widget. At the time, it was free. I don't know what it is, if it's still around today. But that allowed, at least for customers who wanted to consume the majority of the content, which was in English, if they wanted to consume that in their native language, they could easily do that, and it would do a good job of translating the page. In the case of Kaltura, we had plans to go do that, but that never came to fruition because I moved on. So.
Yeah. So I mean, you come to the space with a great and wonderful background. And forgive me, I remember that you were with Kaltura the last time that we talked. So now you're in this new role with SAP, which and then again another big, amazing enterprise that's been around for a while. Just some quick shout outs to some of the folks that are on the stream here with us: Jenny Wagle and Jeffrey Rowe and Carolyn Zick, all great friends. Terrific to see you guys. Thank you for jumping in. Nice to see you all today. I didn't really land hard on sort of like what we were going to be talking about today, because I figured we had such a great conversation last time. We could just kind of free form a little bit and talk about whatever's on your mind, with the community world, or sort of what your new role. I'm personally kind of fascinated with, what you're going to be doing with SAP. Many moons ago, back around 2013 to 15, SAP was one of my customers that I worked with when I was with CMX Summit. And I did a lot with SAP HANA and SAP BI at the time. But I mean, SAP is a many-headed monster in the best possible way. I mean that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get your arms around in an enterprise that size. But if anybody's up to it, it's you, man. So would love to hear about your journey so far.
Yeah, so I'm coming off, my second sabbatical in several years, and I got to talk to a lot of great brands along this journey. Very fortunate to land this amazing, really exciting role at SAP. And so I'm now the director of community strategy. And so what does that mean? I mean, SAP has been around forever. The company just had its 50th anniversary. The community is approaching officially its 20th anniversary, but there are elements of the SAP community that go back, depending on which super fan you speak to, they would argue maybe as old as 30, 35 years ago. And the reality is that even till today, the traffic and the volume that coming to the community is in multi-millions as far as unique visitors. There's an incredible amount of rich content that's out there. I think the opportunity at hand really is to kind of do a refresh of the experience, and really tap into this amazing install base to take it to another level. And so what excites me is there's a lot of big challenges right now ahead of me to kind of move these big mountains to make it a better experience. But what's encouraging is we've got really great visibility from the management chain. And so we've already had, even in week 3, I was asked to present to my boss, the VP, up to the C-level executive, and then up to a board level member on my initial findings. They said, come and kick the tires, don't spend a lot of time on legacy presentations. So we did that. That was very, very well received. There's a lot of opportunity here, number one. And secondarily, more recently, we've had, our C-level had a review with our CEO. So community is truly front and center. And again, I think that where the future is that what's, I'm situated within the overall learning and development organization. It's more than 1,000 people. So it's even bigger than both, startups I went to more recent roles. And so the good news there is that they see that the top management sees community really as the gateway, the onboarding, the on-ramp for learning and development. And we know in the B2B world, the main reason why B2B professionals are coming to community and participating in community is really to up-level their skills. We see this, certainly with Salesforce. We see it now ServiceNow just launched their Rise Up. I give a shout out to Mark Obi on the work that they did with their, their community refresh. And it makes a lot of sense. And so at the end of the day, if you can provide a platform and tools for your customers to, level up their game on using your product, guess what? They're going to have more thirst for your product. They're going to promote your brand, and they're going to get their friends to use the product even further. And so there is a rich, huge opportunity here to tap into this massive install base, this massive set of customers that are still with us, people that have sort of stepped away but are ready to come back in. And then a whole new generation. I mean, today we don't really have what we would consider trade schools of what was considered or was common in the 50s and 60s, whether it be welding or auto mechanics or construction. And frankly, the tech has become sort of the modern age trade school. So these kids that are not going to college at 18 or others who are trying to reinvent themselves, you can go to Google, take 6 months worth of coursework and get an entry level job. I mean, Trailblazer is doing the same thing, and SAP is now trying to do that same kind of model. So, right now, there's a lot of really good things that are already happening in community. There's lots of other opportunities that I've already identified. Again, coming off of 2 back-to-back unicorns, less than 500 people going through 1,000, now coming back to a massive organization, 110,000 employees, 140 countries, 400,000 customers. It's taken a little bit of a time here for me to kind of, get used to that again and figure out, who's who and where to build the right relationships. But it's an exciting challenge.
I can only imagine. I mean, definitely. And if anybody's up to it, you definitely are, my friend. So I'm really gratified to hear that the C-level has embraced the idea of community building as a central part of what their strategy needs to be. As we know, that's not always the case in especially some large organizations where there's a lot of lack of alignment of what leadership wants or what they need. And I think it's such a great lesson, that you're demonstrating in how you've approached this by saying, well, let's look at where we are. Let's do some level setting with everybody, and then let's do a refresh of the experience and make it even that much better than it is. I really love that in what you said, and just the opportunity to see. How you're going to seamlessly come back in there and do a lot of wonderful things for them. But I love how the that idea of upskilling people is kind of central to the notion of what you were describing. I know that so often community can be seen as just another acquisition tool to get people in the door. But, as you and I both know, community's strong point tends to be full life cycle. How do we keep people engaged at all points, on their journey and what they do? So that's really terrific to hear. And the last thing I'll say, and then we've got some comments I want to pop up here as well. Is really I like that interesting focus on talent and sort of the development of people who aren't necessarily going a university route. They're going more of a trade school equivalent, kind of route in modern terms, moving in. SAP looking at those communities as an opportunity for being talent farms or, places where we're basically bringing people up through the ranks, helping them get certifications, helping them get some education, and then get into a good paying job. Without necessarily doing the full university route, which isn't for everybody necessarily. There's so much to love in what you share. That's amazing, man.
And to that point, I put in if you could share it at some point. I put in the private chat. There's actually a link. We're having an amazing event next month in Las Vegas called Tech Ed. It's actually an annual. It's a big annual SAP event, but there's going to be a huge virtual component. So if there's anybody out there that is interested in learning more about SAP or getting upskilled on entry level stuff, that's a free online event. And of course, if people want to put some money down and go to Vegas, there's still tickets available. So
great. And Kalisa, who is my ever erstwhile and wonderful showrunner and engineer, she's going to put the link up in the chat for everybody. So
awesome.
Thank you, Kalisa. So, yeah, a couple of comments that just kind of came up here. A comment from Carolyn, fascinating stuff about the language strategy and localized experience. Just a quick shout out to Carolyn. She's doing some wonderful video work, and caught her on, I think, the Community Hour pretty recently, and is doing some wonderful work out in our space. Jenny says, agreed, Carolyn. Dani has some of the most global community experience of any other community professional I know. I agree. Absolutely.
Thanks,
And lovely to see you. There's a comment. There's a question from Jenny here. So many community professionals have been impacted by layoffs. What advice do you have for them as they look for their next opportunity or dream job? How do you keep your spirits up during yours? Great question. What was your journey, and what advice do you have to give, man?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, there's still a big thirst for the skill set in the marketplace. Number one. Number two, I think you need to take a step back and understand, and it's not easy to go through these types of events in your life. But I think at some point you've got to pause and reflect back and say, look at what I've done, understand the value that you bring to the table. You need to spend time and put a plan together, figure out what is your dream job. Don't be shy. I mean, the sky's the limit. And if you don't aspire to do that, you're going to have a hard time getting a great job, not just a job. That's number one. As you do that, it's really important to refine your pitch. When I've been through these experiences, the first thing was not to jump to LinkedIn and say, okay, change my profile to open for work, or say, hey, it was no. You got to leverage your network. And so I would pick up the phone and get on one-on-ones with Erica and Brian and Richard and Bill Johnson and others and say, hey, let's catch up. And as you're doing those conversations, you want to think about what value add you can bring to them during the conversation. So, I have a really good article that I wrote a few years ago on Medium that talks about my journey in 2020. I'll get the link for that. We can share that out as well. But I think even that summer, I set up 150 Zoom calls on my own, catching up with people. And what that does is, again, it's leveraging your community. It's about planting seeds and making people aware, because, again, somebody may not have a role in their back pocket, but as they're having more conversations with their peers, oh, hey, I remember now, Donnie's looking, Carolyn's looking, whatever it may be, because that's how the great jobs are frankly landed. And then, of course, as you're going through the interview process, it's really, understanding, and even in your day job, you need to be able to communicate the value of community. And many people, many recruiters, many executives who are interviewing, they don't necessarily understand that. So you have an opportunity to educate them about that skill set and the value that you can bring to the table.
Yep.
And in some cases, you may actually come across a situation where you're talking to somebody and they don't have a role for you, and they decide, I need to go hire this person. That's what happened with me with Kaltura. I got introduced. I met with CrowdVocate, and then Gal Biran, who's their founder, said, hey, I just talked to this company Kaltura about community, but you're the guy. And so he connected me, and I ended up doing this presentation to them. I thought they were going to hire me as a consultant. They wanted me to talk about the value of community. I presented to like 25 people on their extended marketing team, the head of CSMs, the head of VP marketing, head of support. And then from there, my future boss is like, I need to meet you one-on-one. And that led to, one thing led to another. I don't have a job for you. We need to go get funding from the CEO. And that's how it all happened. So you just got to keep the faith. And so, there's a lot of great tools that are out there as well. And then, of course, there are, there's Slack channels that I think many of us are connected with, whether it be CMX, Community Club, Dinner 5. I was just on a call yesterday with Jake McKee and some other great professionals. And there are a lot of great resources and people out there that have been through this. I mean, again, even in 2020, Brian Oblinger and I were going through the same journey. We're going to talk to the same brands. We went on the same Yellow Brick Road. We're trading notes. And this is before he decided to go solo. But point is that most people are willing to help out, share their knowledge, because at the end of the day, if we're helping elevating each other in the space, at the end of the day, we're going to help elevate ourselves. And so I think, you just got to be, have faith and not give up. And of course, these things take time, and
they do
have rejections along the way. And many times you don't know why. And it's typically has nothing to do with you personally. There's decisions that are made. Again, I talked to a ton of, startups. I talked to, AWS and Square and a variety of other great brands along my most recent journey. And in many cases, it had nothing to do with, me not being ready for the role or being the right fit. It was other things happened during that process that they decided to go another direction. So.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the movie Glenn Ross, the sales film with I think Alec Baldwin is the star in it. There's the old saying that he gets up and he says it's ABC, always be closing, right? I would say it's ABN, always be networking, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we can ever leave that behind. I'm so glad that you led with that as a point. I worked in recruiting for about 15 years before I made the transition to the community space many moons ago. But that is one of the things that I've come back to again and again. If you find yourself, in a downside situation and you are, wondering what to do next, it's time to reactivate the network. It's not time to go out and blanket your resume on every open job, requisition that's out there. I love what you said. Yeah, I went to Brian, I went to Richard, I went to, to other people, within the space that I respect and that I like. And that was exactly what I did when I left the agency world and I decided I was going to kind of go to the next chapter. I ended up going to Joe Cottrell at the time, and he threw me onto Richard, and then I ended up working with Richard, and then the rest is history. That's the journey. So I think, especially in our space, where everybody gets how important that network is. Everybody in the community space tends to be much more of a giver than people in other networks. That's our real strength as a space, and so. I love that you're putting that out there. That's really wonderful.
Right. In addition to that, again, David Spinks right now has got, I think, a cohort of, I think I just saw a tweet or a LinkedIn post he made that, he's got 40 people in his portfolio that are looking, that he's ready to connect with. I think Roseland has got another one. So again, there are people that are actually actively trying to harness a portfolio of great talent that companies can connect with. So certainly tap into that. And then, of course, you want to be able to work on your personal branding. And so having talks with, Todd, or getting on, the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast, or talking with, Chris Detzel, wherever it may be, or even, getting time with Bill Johnson or Brian Oblinger on their events, or even writing, that sharing that knowledge is going to, give more presence in the marketplace, and people are going to be more aware of the value you bring in the work you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Keep sharing your knowledge, keep putting yourself out there. I was having a conversation with Ilker Kansel yesterday, and because he and I've got this whole talent-led initiative that we're doing as a startup around that. And we were just making the point about it's more than just your resume today. It's what your digital footprint is, and how you're contributing, how you're participating in discussions in the space. And you may not think of what you're doing as thought leadership, but your perspective is valid and your experiences are valid. And if you're sharing from the heart, I think that is powerful. And if someone is an employer and they're looking at you and your background, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile. They're going to also look if you've got a portfolio website, or there are other communities that you've managed, or if you've got a Substack or a Medium. All of that stuff is incredibly relevant, I think, in today's job search. And so glad to hear you talking about those things too. So what else about the community space is exciting to you these days, or challenging, if you want to put it that way? I'm seeing like a whole bunch of change, in our space. Chorus and Higher Logic kind of have like new versions of what they're doing. I see a ton of startups in the community platform space. I see the rise of things like community operations. Web3 is having an impact on things across the board. What do you have your eye on these days? What's intriguing?
I think there's a couple of things. One is sort of, obviously, I'm real focused on my internal challenge at hand, and there's a ton of there's a ton of education that's got to happen even within the company. There's still a large cohort. And this is not just true about SAP. I think even in the industry, they think of community, it's just that, it's community.sap.com. And the reality is that, community is the entire ecosystem. So it's not only the conversations happening in the digital footprint that you own, it's also in all the other places where, you've got to go meet the customer where they're at, especially if they're there in critical mass. So whether it be Stack Overflow or GitHub or Twitter or LinkedIn, you've got to be at a minimum listening to what's happening with those conversations, understanding who's out there. Are they, key influencers? What brands do they represent? And marry that back to what's happening inside your own community. That's sort of one element. So there's the whole digital footprint. The second is, and again, this is part of the challenge at hand. The in-person ecosystem is massive. There are thousands of SAP user groups in Americas, in Germany, in Asia, and not all of them are owned by SAP. There are independent companies that are running them. There are super fans that are running them. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to, even take that to the next level. But even there, understanding, okay, well, who are the power players in the in-person meetup space, or even in the hybrid space? And then you've got, I would say, emerging channels around YouTube and TikTok, where we're seeing great video content coming up now around the brand. And so that too is, again, it's that content contribution. It's those best practice sharing. It's really having a lens on the full picture. So having that, but also educating across the ecosystem, whether it be in product or marketing, that community is not just about this. The good news is, I think that the property we do have is the largest trafficked website inside the SAP's ecosystem. The top management understands that. But there's still an education. I think, no, this is not about lead gen from a marketing perspective. It's about nurturing and growing. And I think that we have some new leadership that has come in. Quite a few of them are ex-Microsoft at very, very senior levels of the company. They had really good exposure to Microsoft Answers. So I think we've got some allies in that respect, but there's still, I think, a lot of work to be done in that realm. So that's sort of my internal lens. Externally, again, even catching up yesterday in Dinner 5 with Jake and Shannon and Leah and Jenny and Joe, which was a great conversation. And even at CMX in person with several other people a few months ago. And then a couple nights ago, I actually had dinner with Reynaldo from Intel, along with the leadership from Common Room. They actually came up and took us to dinner. Reynaldo actually lives down the road from me. And I was actually talking to Intel about opportunity. I was at the Memphis conference in April. And, unlike LinkedIn, where people are reaching out to, let's say, Richard or Adrian, they're saying, hey, I got 6 roles just approved. I'm looking for leadership and community. They would say, I'll go connect to Dani. They're like, oh, go talk to Dani. He's over there. So that was actually a pretty cool experience. So he and I actually got to know each other really well. We had several conversations. The timing didn't work out, which is fine. But he's frankly a neighbor of mine. And so we're still, collectively talking about the fact that, there's still work to be done in the industry of, I guess, getting respect at the executive level. That community is more than just this nice to have thing, and that it truly is a core operational function now to drive value for the entire business. So what encouraged me, and one of the reasons why I came here, is the leadership team gets it. Mm-hmm. It has great visibility. I mean, the fact that I got to present to a board member on week 3 was sort of like, really? And in parallel, my C-level is already presented up to the CEO in recent weeks. So it's getting a lot of great visibility. But at the same time, we also know there's 20 years of community history here. There's a massive base, and there's an opportunity really to take it, to transform it to another level. So I think internally that was an attractive element for me to come in and take this role. But like I said, there's still challenges, I think industry wide, where we're certainly seeing some community leaders getting burnout. They're one-person shows. They're not getting the resources they need, or they're not getting the buy-in that they need. And then, of course, there's still a ton of education that has to happen in the space about the value add and being able to demonstrate that value. Even the discussions around, the community ROI and the value community. And even I think no one's really truly figured out, ideally, capturing the data around community. I think there's highlights. There are elements that require a lot of manual work to get some of it, but mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's truly broken through to have this amazing full suite of dashboard that really shows the full picture. And I'm actually attending Richard Millington's workshop in San Mateo next week, so that's going to be an interesting
Yeah, I was just going to bring up. I mean, Richard, I think, has been doing some really kick butt stuff this year around measurement of community, and
Yeah.
I mean, I think even just sort of his description of like building the kinds of dashboards, the kind of segmented data that we need in order to get a better picture of the community and community growth over time. I mean, it seems like there's a lot that has to go into doing that manually still, and so I'm hopeful for some suites of tools that start to get developed out of that maybe it starts to become something that filters down, to the rest of us without having to have a team of developers and data scientists, surrounding us, trying to help us get to some of that information we need. Um, I just wanted to kind of acknowledge the one point that you made earlier, that the community is more than just sort of that owned platform that you've got. It's also the social media pieces of that. I've increasingly been talking about this is like, you need to look at the community as the entire ecosystem that's there. And I like to use the metaphor of it's sort of the Nautilus shell with the multiple chambers. And, you want them to all kind of come towards that central chamber at some point. But all of those outer chambers are valid places where communication and connection and sense of community can begin to develop. And so having your hands on the social data as well as the community data is really critical in moving forward. I just wanted to kind of take another quick look at some of these the comments that we had out here. Jenny had to leave, but I'm sure she'll tune back in for the rest of this when she's got an opportunity. Carolyn was making the comment, always keep those networks open. As a freelancer, that's what kept the lights on for me so many times. Absolutely. And we had a comment here from Jeffrey. Staying busy and active within the space really helped me pass the time between jobs. Yes. I had more time to lean into hosting CMX events, doing yeah. I mean, you fill in with those things. I mean, I'm hoping like, as long as there's a community space here, like I'm a confirmed guy in the consulting space. I have no plans to ever go and manage communities. Or again, I like doing the consulting. I like going, and having the perspective of being in multiple places. That's my value as a consultant. But it's the same thing, on the consulting side. That you need to acknowledge there are going to be peaks and valleys in your career. Sometimes you're not fully billable. You don't have those things, and that's exactly what Jeffrey's saying. You fill in with thought leadership, you write a book, you do a blog, you do a stream, and those are powerful ways to keep yourself engaged within the space. I love that so much.
Absolutely. And then, one of the things I want to touch upon, especially in large enterprises like the one I'm at now with SAP, a very critical element of the community is also the employee base and the partner base. Those numbers are staggering. And so you need to keep them into perspective as well and understand what their role is in the overall, management of community. But at the end of the day, they're also a key player. They're a set of key players in the community ecosystem. But again, even going back to just educating the executive team, the cross business, whatever element it may be, there's still not a lot of education, I would say, about why do customers participate in B2B? What are the nature of conversations that are happening? And again, I talked to the fact that it's about up-leveling their skills. And again, this is why it's so important that we're part of the learning and development organization. That's one. Two is the fact that it's really, there's Q&A. I've got a question or a challenge I need to figure out. I need to do it quickly. So, finding that question or answer, or being able to answer a question easily and quickly has got to be a key notion. Two, I figured out something really cool about the latest release, and I want to share it with my peers. So it's a best practice discussion. It's like, how do I derive more value from my investment in the platform? And thirdly, whether we like it or not, as I've seen this in my career, 20 to 25% of all conversations at the end of the day are going to fall into this bucket of a feature request and ideation. I'm trying to do something, I can't do it. Oh, we don't have that capability yet. And so, working closely with the product team on that, it's a product related conversation, and getting alignment on how that should be managed is really very critical. In addition to what we touched upon earlier, this is one of the big opportunities in SAP. Even given the size of how big the community is, there's frankly not a whole lot of localization in play today. So I see that as a big opportunity, in the coming years. So that's all exciting.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. Donnie, I can't believe we're kind of almost to the end of our time here, but I did want to say, like, I'll comment on one of the things that you said, which was around that need to keep educating different constituencies, around the organization and kind of keep them up. The thing that keeps me up at night is I feel like when the pandemic hit, there was a greater awareness and consideration of digital experiences overall. Whether that was social or, like thinking more about like, oh, more people are buying through the online space, more of our customers here. This is where we can engage with them. Maybe we should invest more in this community thing that we've been flirting with for the past decade and a half, prior to COVID. And then suddenly there was like an increased interest. The embrace became fuller of some of those platforms and things. And now I feel like now that I think some of the concern about COVID is waning, and I hope it continues to wane over time. I wonder if some of that attention to the community spaces has faded a little bit, or there's sort of like, well, I don't need to pay as much attention to that anymore. I don't know if you're feeling that. I'm not necessarily, but I'm worried about it.
Yeah. So no, there's definitely concern. I mean, fortunately, on like I said, in my current environment, right now there's great alignment, great support, and a lot of investment in the space. So that was an attractive reason for me to come here. At the same time, even having discussions with some of my peers, they're still very challenged with getting or having those conversations and getting the right level of buy-in, to get these things done. And there's that, and then of course you're seeing just cutbacks in some of the the players that are out there, and of course just went through a painful round of people letting people go, and I think CMX let a few people go, and so again, I think it's just some of the challenges of the marketplace. But I think and even in good times, there's still it's felt like they're it's changed the mindset from this nice to have to now this is a critical business function that needs the proper level of investment.
Well, and I think you're right. I think that many organizations are taking that mindset, and I'm hopeful that it remains that way. I'm wondering if some of the downsizing or some of the layoffs that we've seen in the industry are maybe related to that sense of, well, maybe we can we try the community thing? We're it's not working out, or we're going to go a different direction. Obviously, we live in the community space. This is our careers are built around this. We're going to say, yeah, you're going to come back to us. But I believe in my heart that this is something that every organization needs to embrace more fully, because it is just a more direct way to interact. Hey, look, before we sign off today, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Tech Ed conference that's coming up, or any other events that you're going to be appearing in sometime soon?
Yeah, so the link will be shared out. So SAP is having this, it's an annual event. It's happening in Vegas in person, but really, it's really about deep dive education on the various offerings, legacy as well as new offerings from SAP. There's going to be a lot of great personnel there in person managing some of those things, but more importantly, there's also an online opportunity to join. So I would certainly, if you have interest, and if SAP plays into your environment, it's a great way to learn more about what we're offering, what we're offering today, and what we're offering in the future. SAP is really becoming a major player moving to the cloud. That's one. And then, I've already been hit up by a few other people to, have some additional discussions in the coming weeks. So I'll be publishing those on LinkedIn. So I know that, my friend Scott Wilder and I are going to catch up soon, and Yuri from who he was originally from Ukraine. He's over in Berlin. I'll be on his show, I think, in a week or so, and then more to come. But as far as in-person events, anybody who's going to be in the Bay Area next week, I'll be attending Richard's data workshop in San Mateo. So if you're there, it'd be great to catch up with you there. That's pretty much it. I mean, hopefully, we kind of get through this economic storm and we can get back to some real business travel again, because it's one thing that I'm looking forward to doing again, especially with SAP being in 140 countries. I mean, my manager's in Germany, his boss is in Palo Alto, and his boss is back in Germany. But how our team is kind of distributed 50-50 between the Americas and Europe. And even one of my partners in crime and strategy, she's actually based in Croatia. So we talked about having a strategy offsite in Croatia, which is on my bucket list to go to. So
that sounds amazing, man. You're quite busy, and unsurprisingly, and you're very much in demand. Dani, I appreciate you and all you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on the show. You're always welcome back, and let's keep talking about stuff in the space as it comes up. I hope you have a really good time with at the event with Richard next week. That sounds great.
Thank you. And then also put in the or you can share after the again, for anyone who does not know me or is not connected to me, feel free to hit me up on Twitter and or LinkedIn. Twitter, my handle is DannyBoy777, and then I can't see. I guess I can't post anymore in the private chat. Oh no, that's the comments here. 1 second. I'll put it in my LinkedIn profile. Get that over to the private chat. So we'll share that out. So feel free to reach out. And it was great catching up with you, Todd.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise, man. I really appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. But thank you for joining us. And I think this brings us to the conclusion of the stream today. Join us in a couple of weeks. November 11th, Adrian is going to be on along with Jenny. And we're going to be talking about the accidental community manager. I know Adrian's been making the rounds on a couple of different events. Oh yeah.
And I gotta meet Adrian up again in person because I have to get it signed. It was like not available. We missed it by a week to get it available at CMX. So.
Oh man. Yeah, I just finished it. I thought it was a great read. A lot of practical advice in there. Unsurprisingly, Adrian's a very down to earth guy. A lot of vulnerability around his experiences. I think what an amazing tool for both new and experienced community managers. So join us for that. That's going to be at 11 a.m. Central Time, so it's going to be a little later than our usual time as well. So I hope you'll join us. The event is already posted up on the Clocktower Advisors page. And I ask any of you who are tuned in, I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube. If you would do me a solid and follow me up there, I would appreciate it. You'll get links to all of the past streams, which are a little challenging to locate on LinkedIn. So that's why we dual stream up to YouTube as well.
Subscribe right now.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. All right. Well, with that said, be good to yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend. Dani, thank you again. And we'll see you out there in community land. Take care.
Have a good one. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.